Присно поминаємо воїну Віталію, сотвори йому вічною пам'ять.
Вечная память, вечная память, вечная память, вечная память, вечная память, вечная память. Зі святими упокой, Христе, вечная память.
If you care about freedom, and you care about democracy, and you care about human rights, then you have to care about what's happening in Ukraine. You can't build a peaceful, prosperous world that respects democracy, respects human rights, respects human dignity, if you have a world that's ruled by force, where might makes right. Law is really the only option that we have. If Ukraine loses on the Eastern Front, we all lose. And the world's completely transformed, and that's just not acceptable.
The American Society of International Law was founded in 1906. Our mission is to promote the establishment and maintenance of international relations on the basis of law and justice.
Even though we're the American Society of International Law, we really are very much an international society. We have about 3,500 members, and about 40% of our members come from overseas.
The alternative to international law is war. When disease harms you, breaks you, then medicine heals. And when war breaks you, law heals. And so that's what international law is supposed to do. And this system is coming to get Vladimir Putin. You don't just invade a country, show aggression, and use atrocities and get away with it.
My friends, it is a great honor for me host you in City Council. Thank you for visit to Ukraine. Only brave people arrive to Lviv during war. Russian invasion totally changed my life and life in Ukrainian cities.
Lviv's mayor, Andrei Sadovy, welcomed us with an inspiring speech, and it was very meaningful and important for all participants.
Ukrainian victory has two parts. One part, they occupy our territory. Next part, rebuild our country. We need your support. We need your advice. I believe in our victory. You must believe in our victory. We must build our victory together. Only victory. Never give up. Слава Україні!
When the mayor said that there's no choice but victory, it really struck me because we feel the same way. I mean, we recognize that Ukrainians are making sacrifices for all of us right now. And we know that they're fighting for a world order that we all value. I think it's the least we could do to come over here and to find a way to support them on these international law issues and just to show some basic human empathy and solidarity. After our delegation met the mayor, I knew that he was going to invite us to a reception and dinner. What I didn't know is that the reception would be held in a bomb shelter. And I thought, what have I done? You know, I was sort of like the Pied Piper of international law. I lured all these people over into this war zone to talk about international law, and here we are. And this is the reality of it. We're in a bomb shelter. This is where we have to hold our reception. It was, in some ways, kind of a wake-up call, but I guess also an affirmation that we were in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing.
Ukrainians and Mayor of Lviv wanted to show the delegation that life goes on and nothing will stop us from hosting our guests, even if the reception takes place in the air raid shelter.
The attack on Ukraine is an attack on the international legal order itself, which is why we're here to stand tall for the rule of law. We have 3 plenary sessions and it's followed by 5 breakout sessions with both Ukrainians and international law visitors so that we can deliberate together over these different critical issues that Ukraine faces today. The idea of this is that we learn from each other and we build bridges with each other in pursuit of our missions. With that, I will convene this summit.
The goals of this conference on a high level is to reaffirm the basic principles of international law, also to meet the community of international lawyers in Ukraine.
We actually asked our Ukrainian colleagues, what are the difficult legal issues that you face? And we wanted to work with them in creating brainstorming sessions to try to develop what sort of legal responses can Ukraine muster. There's civil compensation for all the damage that Russia has inflicted. There's the issue of unlawfully deported children and how to get them back. Then we have the issues of economic sanctions.
We're also dealing with the issue of ensuring accountability for the crime of aggression against Ukraine and the establishment of a dedicated special tribunal. And I think it is a really important sign of solidarity of American lawyers to be here with us during the war.
Today is the time of crisis in international relations, and I'm very grateful for American Society of International Law to have this Lviv summit in Ukraine.
We're here together in Lviv, and there's something really powerful about that. And it would be very different if we were in Warsaw, or we were in New York, or we were somewhere else in the world. And the fact that we're talking about Ukraine in Ukraine, I think, has a really symbolic meaning. This is a place where giants of international law have walked, and being in these hallways, you kind of feel their presence.
It's in this place where Raphael Lemkin studied law. Raphael Lemkin was the person who gathered this enormous cache of evidence about what the Nazis were doing during World War II, and he realized that there was a crime happening, a crime that didn't even have a name. He came up with the word genocide.
Dr. Lemkin is the man who created the word genocide.
I became interested in genocide because it happened so many times. And then I said to myself, now being a lawyer, I'm going to do something about it.
Likewise, Sir Hirsch Lauterpacht wrote this book called An International Bill of Rights of Man that really laid the groundwork for the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Louis Sohn was also another amazing lawyer who studied here in Lviv as well. He helped to draft the UN Charter and the Statute for the International Court of Justice. All three of these men were members of the American Society of International Law. So we felt a special obligation to come here to Lviv to mark the anniversary of those documents being adopted.
They did all of that in times of incredible darkness. And instead of giving in to the darkness, out of the ashes, they built a new structure that's really the beginning of multilateral organizations and the framework for peace and economic security in the 20th and 21st century.
We stand today at the threshold of a great event, both in the life of the United Nations and in the life of mankind.
It is important that all the lawyers who came here, they recognize the role of the city of Lviv University, of Lviv heritage and Lviv legacy for the contemporary modern international law.
We begin in Ukraine, where officials say that at least 4 people have been killed and several wounded in a Russian missile attack on the western city of Lviv. The local mayor says that dozens of buildings have been damaged and rescuers are now searching through the rubble for potential survivors.
It's very challenging from the professional legal standpoint to deal with war crimes because it involves evidence collection, which sometimes is just hard because not everybody can even have access when this destruction was caused by an airstrike, for example. And also, it's a very complex legal qualification because indiscriminate shelling, of course, is prohibited by international law. The trickiest part is to prove the intent of the commanding staff in targeting the civilian neighborhood.
Everyone knows that Russia has committed aggression. But there is still yet another step to be made. It must be proven before the court of law. So I happened to visit a site where Russian missiles struck. And the horrible consequences of that missile strike is not just reflected in the damaged building. 10 innocent civilians were killed. Many more were displaced. When I spoke with Miroslava, I was really impressed by the calmness with which she was relaying to me the horrors that she had to go through because of Russia's senseless war.
Це був звичайний гарний літній теплий день. Ми живемо з дітьми, я, чоловік, наших 5 дітей в цьому будинку. Тої ночі Росія випустила ракети по Україні. І ми всіх дітей забрали в цей коридор, постелили каремати, і ці ракети зруйнували все, до чого ми з чоловіком доробилися. Мали квартиру, яку ми купили за свої гроші, для нас, для наших дітей, також авто.
There is a clear requirement under international humanitarian law that there must be a distinction between military targets and civilian population. And what we saw clearly points in the direction that Russia committed potentially a war crime because a missile targeted a clearly civilian building.
Пані Оля, ми з нею часто гуляли в парку. Пані Оля мала собачку, ми мали собачку, ми гуляли. Ці всі люди тут жили. На жаль, їх ця ніч забрала. Це несправедливо. Не мало бути.
As the mother of 5, she has a choice to leave Ukraine to safety. She decided to stay here.
Свідомо залишилися в Україні, попри те, що, скажімо, особисто у мене сім'я патріотів з діда-прадіда. Ми свідомо тут живемо, і що просто це наша ціна. Це наша ціна за здобуття цієї волі, цієї незалежності. Ми заплатили так. Хтось заплатив так, як ці люди, хтось віддав життя. Ми українці, ми сильна нація, живучі.
I think it was incredibly important that part of this convention included our visit to the hospital entitled Unbroken to see the victims of the Russian aggression.
It's easy to talk about things like proportionality and other aspects of the law of armed conflict without really getting into the soldiers on the ground that are actually on the giving and the receiving end of those actions. And I think seeing it up close is a reminder that it's real. They have what we would call a zero to hero program, where they go from right off the battlefield, physically healing, to getting a prosthesis measured, affixed, created, and then going through the rehabilitation process on how to make a bed, how to hold your child, how to do your laundry, all those tasks that we take for granted. It's important that they go back to their life and live a meaningful life, and I think it's profound.
Visiting that hospital, it was really moving at the human level, and it was also enlightening at the legal level, because you saw evidence of the aggression, those injured people. And you know that this is not something simply written in a newspaper. You saw with your own eyes. You know this is true. And because it is true, you must act as soon as possible.
It really brings home, the reason why we're here and the importance of law and of international law more broadly in a particular situation like this, and why what we're doing matters.
Thank you for letting me speak to you on your last day here. So why did we come to Lviv? To understand history, to honor it, to stand tall, to better understand the road ahead, to endorse the Lviv declarations, and to try to make hope and history rhyme. I chose to come to Lviv to show solidarity, to honor the struggle and the people who have been through the struggle, the unbroken. But more fundamentally, it's to talk about the future and how we can build a better future together to help Ukraine find its lawful place in the world.
Ultimately, international law is about protecting individuals, protecting groups. Raphael Lemkin saw that, Herschel Lauterpacht saw that. We follow their footsteps. We, the representatives of the American Society of International Law and the Ukrainian Association of International Law, affirm and commit to work together to uphold these principles.
If you believe in freedom and democracy and a safe and viable and prosperous America, we must stand up for Ukraine, because Ukraine is defending the most American value there is, which is a government built for its citizens, by its citizens, to keep a nation safe and prosperous. That is what Ukraine is fighting for.
It's not just international lawyers that should be caring about this. It's really everyone, because all of us has something at stake in maintaining a legal order that allows for global peace.
I'm really proud of what we've achieved by coming here to Ukraine and partnering with Ukrainians and dealing with some of these complex issues. But at the same time, there's this recognition that this fight just never ends. The fight for human rights goes on and on and on, the ongoing struggle. So this is a moment in time, and I hope that we've helped to meet the moment. But I know it won't be the last time that this fight must be fought.
Thank you to the Ukrainian Association of International Law and to the American Society of International Law. Thank you for being there to stand tall for the rule of law.
75 years ago, the world took two huge steps into the future. With the Genocide Convention and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the nations of the world genuinely united to spell out what it takes to protect people and human dignity all around the world. I think it takes just as much energy to sustain these kinds of timeless values as it did to define them in the first place. That's why today it's so important that we all stand tall for the rule of law.
Thank you for standing tall for the rule of law and for the great work that you're doing on these international legal issues.
It is easy to stand up for human rights in times of peace. The real test of our resolve comes in times of conflict. Please don't give up the fight.
You, lawyers, can help us uphold the rule-based order, innovate international mechanisms to bring home our stolen children, to help Ukraine repatriate unlawfully detained civilians, to deny safe haven to Russia and perpetrators of heinous crimes, to restore justice for victims and survivors, and to rebuild Ukraine. Neither of these tasks can wait. There is a role here for anyone who wants to stand tall for the rule of law. Slava Ukraini!